crisis of epic proportions.
Fears of waterborne diseases.
Land is underwater.
So over the last week or so, I was involved voluntarily in flood relief operations in the southern part of the country, in unison with the Pakistan Navy. The country receives a lot of rainfall in the monsoon season every year. This year, however, there were unprecedented rainfalls owing to the climate change. We've been seeing that winters have been getting a lot smaller, and the ice caps in the north and the glaciers have been melting at record speeds. So this year, hell broke loose. Massive flash flooding devastated extensive swaths of land, and at one time the entire country, 1/3 of it, was underwater. This all mounted to a staggering $30 billion in losses. People have lost their homes, their farmlands, their animals, their livelihood. There are food shortages, diseases, infections, and people don't really have anywhere to go. It's really sad state of events. So several organizations jumped in to help these flood affected people, including the massive effort pushed forward by the Pakistan Army and the Navy. Several NGOs as well, they were included in the relief effort as well. There has been some foreign assistance as well, but it can't really compare to the massive scale of the disaster. So this is what was happening when I flew back from the UK. During my flight over the Indus River, even at 45,000 feet, I could see that where there normally should be land, all of it was stagnant water. Muddy, stagnant flood water. So that is when I saw the actual scale of the calamity, and I thought to myself that it'll be a shame if I wasn't a part of the relief effort. So shortly after I landed, I asked around a few of my colleagues, and I came into contact with an NGO which was headed by a renowned doctor as well. She's been heading regular medical camps in the underprivileged parts of the country in regular days as well, so that felt like a good start. I read some WHO manuals on what to expect, and I volunteered. Our team had a total of 3 doctors, including myself, and luckily we were well-rounded. I had experience in pediatrics and gastroenterology, including obviously others as well, but I knew that especially pediatrics and gastroenterology will come in handy in the wake of the diseases that spur in after the flooding. Dr. Jamal, who was extensively experienced in intensive care, and he also had experience previously in medical camps as well. Great guy. He was also my roommate for the length of my stay, and we unexpectedly shared a lot of interests and resonated really well together. So if you're watching this, hello brother. Dr. Komal, or Adi as we used to call her, which means sister in the local language. She was a first-year resident in general surgery, and she was our team leader as well. Really sweet person, really fun to work with. Also importantly, her knowledge of the local language was fundamental in our collective effort. So we worked in coordination with the Pakistan Navy. All the logistics, travel, accommodation, food, medical supplies, all of it was provided by the Navy, and we were there as the medical team, right at the center of the medical effort. Navy's own medical doctors were stationed in more forward areas where land access was terminated and only aerial access was available, which was provided by 2 Sea King helos which were carrying out regular sorties. The officer in command in the field was a young Lieutenant Danyal, and his second in command was Sub-Lieutenant Shahrukh. Both really great guys, brave young men who knew what they were doing. So every day we used to establish different campsites which were decided a day earlier. These targeted areas with the potential surge in the disease or where the medical aid hadn't reached yet. We also took rations with us in addition to the medical supplies to the areas that we went. The drivers of the trucks, they thought they were driving Lamborghinis because, oh boy, they sped. On reaching the place, we had to unload all the supplies and the rations, establish the camp within half an hour. Sometimes it'd be under a tree, sometimes it'd be an abandoned building. Once it was a school as well. So the camp has to be established in a proper way. So there should be an entry point, The patient should get checked and there should be an exit point, and it all should be in a serial manner. And after the exit point, there should be the pharmacy so that the patients can take their prescription drugs on their way out. So this ensured a relatively smoother flow as far as the management was concerned. But as far as the disease, that was an entirely different story. There was a sharp increase in malaria cases, a lot of febrile illnesses, skin diseases, particularly in the children, throat infections, ear infections, chest infections, acute gastroenteritis, lots and lots of anemia, malnourishment. It was a mayhem. In one case, an unconscious young boy was rushed to us in emergency. Dr. Jamal, the intensivist in our team, he quickly assessed it as a case of septicemia, and that's a condition, if you don't recognize it in time and well, it can prove fatal as well. So we gained IV access, pushed fluids, and he was promptly referred to a tertiary care hospital nearby in one of the Navy vehicles. Sometime later, we got the report that he was doing well, thankfully. We saw neglected wounds with maggot infestation as well. There were reports of dog bites, snake bites from other camps too. About the numbers, we checked about 300 to 325 patients per day on average. One day we had to prescribe so many antimalarials that our stock ran out, and the next stock was due a day late. So we put statuses and we gathered donations on our own, and thankfully the people were really generous. We did reach the target in intended time, and it did make a difference. Thank you, everyone. Most of the areas we went to were Sindhi speaking, the local language in the province, and we had a translator with us. He was doing a really great job. We did eventually started to get the knack of it, and after 2 or 3 days the communication ceased to be a problem. On the last day, our commanding officer hosted a dinner for the entire team of naval officers, naval aviation pilots, and us, the doctors. We had a tea afterwards, and that was really well. The overall experience has been tremendously fulfilling and rewarding, owing to the fact that you take the care to the patient where it is needed in the field, instead of them coming to you, and most of the times, frankly, they are not even able to. Making spot diagnosis, working with limited resources, no diagnostic testing, limited supply of medication, all of this in between the supply shortages, and when you're doing the camp, there's a rapid turnover of the patients, so it's really paced environment. So all of this combined makes it a very, very unique experience. We had to wiggle our way around these limitations. Clinical prowess and clinical experience does come in handy in these situations. So overall, 10 out of 10 for the experience. I've now come back, but in those areas there's still a massive surge of diseases, especially malaria, dengue, skin diseases, and it's only the beginning. There is still much more to do, both in person and financially, so every little thing helps. Pakistan largely depends on agriculture for its major chunk of GDP, and a lot of agricultural land is underwater as well. So I urge everyone, especially the medical fraternity, to go out in the field and help those in need. Don't think that you're not cut for it, or you don't have the adequate knowledge. Trust me, you do. Because in those situations, a lot of common sense works, and a lot of what you have read in the medical school, that comes in handy. It's not rocket science, it's the everyday things that you've seen in your clinical years. So you should just really come forward. There's a lot of improvisation that you have to do, so as long as you have common sense working for you, you'll be fine. Another very important facet of this calamity is the cause of it, which is primarily the climate change. There is some mismanagement as well, but the primary thing is climate change, because we do need to think about our future generations. What kind of planet are we handing over to them? We all have a role to play in reversing the climate change in our own individual sphere of influence. So with this food for thought, this has been it. Let me know if you have any questions. You can type them down below and I'll be sure to answer them. Subscribe if you're interested, and yeah, farewell.